right, kinfolk, today is the day we are dropping my ultimate 134. I have ranked every single FBS program for the preseason. It's available at foxsports.com. Going to be a whole bunch of content around this, not to be confused with content, which means that you would be happy. And I think you're only going to be happy if your program exceeds expectations. And that's what this is really doing. It is level setting going into this all important and once in a lifetime 2024, the first and only time we get to go through the first and only time of a 12-team playoff. We are competitive from top to bottom. We have probably the best opportunity, not probably, we do have the best opportunity for any team to make the college football playoff that we've ever had, particularly for programs that have never been there and haven't played for a national championship. And I'm very excited about that. But let's start with asking simple questions about not just who is number one or who was 134, but talk about just what it is that I was looking for when I was putting this kind of a list together and who I was thinking about when I was putting this kind of a list together. And I want to start with one notion above all. We start with who has the best opportunity to win the national championship. And we start with who has the best opportunity to win the national championship because that's why we're playing the sport in 2024. I realize that some people feel it's just great to go to bowl games and feel it's just great to get 6 wins if you were 3-9 last year or to feature in a New Year's Six Bowl. But I start with who's going to win the whole damn thing and go backward from there because I genuinely believe that to talk about who's going to win the national championship also gives us a very good compass to point toward as we are trying to find out on and off again who the best teams are in the country. And as my top 25 continues to come out from week 1 all the way through the national championship game on January 20th at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Not Stadium. Yeah, it is Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So let's get started with the takeaways from this, which are, or let's say, not the takeaways from this, but the criteria that I'm using for this. Thank you. Strength of schedule, I think, is important. I don't think it's the most important thing, but looking at what your opponent's resume was last year and what we think about your opponent this year and looking at the opponent win percentage over the course of the season. So if you're playing against SEC opponents, they probably got a pretty good win percentage. Same thing if you're playing against Big Ten opponents, probably got a pretty good win percentage. Then we're looking at the continuity of the coaching staff. Do you return your head coach? How many of those coordinators do you return? Do you return most of the 10-member on the field staff? Changes in philosophy also factor into not just the changes in coordinator, but changes in head coach. For instance, are you changing your philosophy at Penn State if you're James Franklin? No. But are you changing the coordinators on offense and defense? Yes. Those sorts of things. Another one would be returning starters, but returning starters at what we believe are good positions or important positions. So quarterback. Do you have a returning starting quarterback at your program? If not, do you have a veteran starting quarterback at your program? What do you look like in the linebacker room? What do you look like on the defensive line? What do you look like on the interior of the offensive line? Those things matter greatly when we're putting together a preseason list like this. Your 2024 recruiting class. I know that we think of the transfer portal as just another space for recruiting, and it is, but I still think getting players in out of high school has never been more important because you have to be so much better at selecting players because you need them to help you right away because there's always going to be a veteran group in that transfer portal you can go pull from. So do we overvalue some transfer portal gets? I think so. Do we undervalue some recruiting gets? I think so, but that's going to bear out, right? A prime example of this is I think we're going to have a very deep freshman class of wide receivers. Ryan Wingo is going to be great. Ryan Williams is going to be great. Cam Coleman is going to be great. You've heard me talk enough about Jeremiah Smith and how I think he is going to be great. Again, transfer portal attrition is a big part of this. Not just the addition, but who did you lose and why did you lose them, right? Did you lose them because they weren't holding up their end? Did you lose them because they got a better NIL deal from somewhere else? All those things come into this and matter. The changes in the athletic department administration also goes into your preseason ranking. I believe that if you are changing your AD or your AD is taking a new job, we're going to evaluate that AD and we're going to say, what is that person bringing to the football program heading into this season? I think Ross Bjork at Ohio State is an example of this, right? He's coming in after Gene Smith, but the mantra is the same. Whereas Troy Dannon going from Washington to Nebraska makes me feel a little bit better about Nebraska, even as they lost Trev Albert to Texas A&M. Trev Albert made the move with Matt Rule. We also know that Troy Dannon was at Washington and they just played in the national championship game. So I think those two guys going together is also going to help in this very important year for Nebraska. Going to be interesting to see where I have put Nebraska in the 134 as well. Star players kind of goes back into that important positions part, right? Do we know your player's name? Is that person likely to be a Heisman Trophy candidate? And then my favorite, players who I expect to become household names. Players that have been lying in the cut, doing outstanding things for the last couple of years, or players that are just getting into a position where it feels like they're going to have a chance to start and earn that opportunity for us to talk about them in the way that we would talk about every other great player in the sport. So watching Jamison Williams go from Ohio State to Alabama is an example of this. A player who became a household name, right? That's what we're looking for. And that said, there are some segments that I want to do off on their own because I think some of these programs are particularly important for the show and for you. But let's start with number one and go from there. And number one, I have the Ohio State Buckeyes, who have built their program around two dates, November 30th and January 20th. They are all in on winning a national championship in 2024, and their backs are very much against the wall on this. And by there, I mean Ryan Day, who was given everything he asked for to put together the team that he thinks can win right now. Okay? Chip Kelly at offensive coordinator, Jim Knowles back at defensive coordinator, asking a bunch of those defensive players who were great last year to return, and they did. Adding to an already stacked offense with Jeremiah Smith, right? We'll see where Carnell Tate lines up, but it feels like Carnell Tate can line up everywhere he wants. Emeka Buka is the unquestioned leader of that group. Adding Quinshon Judkins to a backfield that already features a home run hitter in Travion Henderson. Shoring up the offensive line is really the thing that we're going to be focusing on when we talk about evaluating how Ohio State looks going forward, and just what kind of a player Will Howard turns out to be at quarterback. I seem to be in the minority in thinking that Will Howard is a good quarterback. I think he's good enough to win Ohio State a national championship because Craig Krenzel was good enough to win Ohio State a national championship. What you have to do is take care of the football and make the plays that are there for you to make and play point guard. Get the ball to these outstanding skill players in space and turn that offense into the kind of thing that's a little bit more versatile than is Marvin Harrison Jr. out there somewhere. We're going to throw it to him. And I think his ability to run and Chip Kelly's creativity as a play caller with his scheme is going to give Will Howard every opportunity to succeed. I've heard over and over again that somehow Will Howard is not a big game quarterback and because he lost his job to Avery Johnson last year, to which I would say the only person at Ohio State right now who's won a conference championship since 2020, 2019 is Will Howard. Okay? I should say, also, he beat Texas Christian, who was undefeated in the Big 12 championship in 2022. And that team played in the national championship game and beat the Big 10 champion Michigan Wolverines. I think all of that needs to bear out. I'm also very excited to find out what Caleb Downs provides for an already stacked secondary. He was the first true freshman at Alabama last year to have 100 tackles or more, the most by a true freshman since 1970, 107. And they play him, they're going to play him everywhere they need to, right? Safety positions, but also you let Sonny Styles drop down to his more natural position of linebacker. But I would love to see him get spot duty at tailback. Ryan Day has talked about it, but also made clear that his job is to play safety in Jim Knowles' 4-2-5. And I wrote earlier this year, and I've been talking about this player ad nauseum. J.J. Smith is next as a freshman. Like, I keep asking people, am I overdoing it when I talk about this dude? And I talk to folks that are in Columbus and around the program, and they're going, no, dude, we got people that old heads that don't have nothing to say about some of the more talented players that have come through here are gushing like little girls about J.J. Smith and what he is capable of doing and what he's already shown them in practice. It's not if that dude's going to play, it's when that dude is going to play. I love the anecdote that Mickey Marotti gave to Urban Meyer about what that dude is capable of. And it's like, we just don't see guys coming in able to do this at his age. He's every bit of 6'3", 218 already. NFL body on a player that is yet to turn 20 and is succeeding in what I already believe is the most talented wide receiver room in the country. Now, in as far as what they have to face on the field, of course, there's Ohio State, that November 30th that they're building toward, and they got to win that game. You cannot lose a fourth straight to Ohio State. But they also got Penn State in a year where Penn State threatens to be tough once again. If Drew Aller can take the leap, Penn State probably becomes the program that it always wanted to be in this conference. And they don't have to play Ohio State and Michigan this year, just Ohio State. I think Ohio State also has Oregon, and that's going to be tough. That's probably, for me, a preview of the Big Ten Championship. I think those two teams are outstanding, also giving you a heads up on what's next in the 134 there. But again, the journey is about getting to November 30th and winning that game. Get to the November 30th undefeated, win that game, and then go win your postseason, right? Win the Big Ten Championship, secure your first round bye, and then start marching toward January 20th to try to win the first national championship at Ohio State since 2014. And I would add to this, the last time we had a significant change to how we crown a national champion, going from the BCS to the 14 playoff, Ohio State was the first program to win a national championship. They have a history of adapting to these things quickly and making these new rules and these new brackets work for them. I think that's 100% in the offing for them in 2024.